the space in the matrix. And this part is relative to very simple operation, but the meaning behind the operation is very useful and very important. So before we move forward into the space in the matrix, we would like to have a quick review on the two basic issues. The first is vector. The second issue is space. Okay. So the first part, in the real space, in the n-dimensional space. So we have two vectors. So because the vector u and v are in the n-dimensional space, so they have n components in the representative direction. So similarly, vector v equals to v1, v2 to vn. So in the past, we learned, so we can compare with real space cube. So we can have various coordinate combination. So if we compare the vector in a space in a low-dimensional space and in high-dimensional space, they have some differences. So in the engineering mathematics, we need to learn how to handle the high-order, high-dimensional space. So we need some new method to handle the high-dimensional space. So in the Rn space, so the first issue is that the angle between the two vectors. So we can use the relationship between the formula u dot v equals to ub cosine theta. So the angle equals to so we can let the u and the v, we can move the two terms on the left side. Then we can perform the half cosine. Then we can get the angle between the two vectors. So it works for the low-dimensional space and the high-dimensional space. Okay. The second issue is the orthogonality. Or orthogonal set. The definition is that so in the set means a group of vectors. And in the group, any two vectors, if ui dot uk, if I equals to k, u equals to And the third issue is that we can handle the scaling issue by using normalization. If the vector is calibrated with the scaling of the vector, so we can have a unit vector of the. So we can carry out the normalization process. So with the consideration, we can have an orthonormal set. So the difference between orthogonal and orthonormal is the scaling. So if you calculate the size by dividing with the size of the vector is called the orthonormal set. So I think it's best review on the vectors, the property of the vectors. So we can find more detail in the chapter 9. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the second issue. It's relative to the space. So we can use a space to span any space. So the relationship between vectors and space will be highlighted here. So So in any space, that the F could be definition with the linear combination of U and V. So C1, C2 could be any value. So we can we call this operation linear combination, right? So so in space, the F, the distribution of the vector F is so we call it we assume the vector exists in the space V. So how can we derive the space V? We usually call the V equals to so the F is a space. There are two vectors, right? So this one is a set. So in the textbook, we have a name called generating set. So from the vector to a space, is a kind of verb. So we can perform the span action based on the vectors. So we can have a space V to describe how the vector F distributed. So for example, for the minus U and 2E. So So you can we can attempt any f vector by linear combination of the two vectors. Okay, so that's the first issue. It's relative to the generalizing set. More detail, we can check the textbook in page 439. Okay, it's a first issue. Okay, and this. And the second issue is that we would like to talk about linear independence and the linear dependence. So it's the second time we mentioned this. In the chapter 3, when we talk about the function. In chapter 9, we talk about vector space. So we mentioned linear independent or linear dependent relationship. So in the chapter 3, we would like to understand the relationship between the three functions because we want to talk about the differential equation. But here we would like to understand the relationship between the three vectors. If the three vectors are parallel or they are in specific space. For example, U1, so U2 equals to 2U1, U3 equals to minus U1. So you can use a linear combination to have the U99 but you can find all of the vectors are linear dependent. So the dimension of the space that the 99 vectors spent one dimension because they only have one linear dependent vectors, only one. But if you have another linear independent vector, so in the space you have 100 vectors. There are only two linear independent vectors. So the number will determine the dimension of the space for the all vectors. So we have a lot of vectors in specific space, but the dimension of the space could be derived by consider the linear dependency. So we need to find, we need to know how many, we need to verify the linear independent vectors. Okay, so it's a second issue. We need to check the linear independent or linear dependent property of the vectors in the space. The reason why we need to study this because in the matrix, for example, they have n row and C1, C2, C1. So in the matrix, we will have a lot of row vectors and column vectors. So in the matrix, we will handle a lot of vectors. So we would like to know the space for the space exists in the matrix. So before we talk about this, we need to understand how to derive the space that the vector distributed. Okay, it's the second issue for the linear independency and the linear dependency. The third issue is that okay. So it's a two-dimensional space. So So if the F equals to C1 S1 plus C2 S2 plus Cn Sn. So we would like to know the space that the F spans. So the generation set the generation set equals to S1, S2 to the Sn. If we span based on the n vectors, we can get the space V. So in the space, if the n vectors are linear independent, then we can call this is a basis. If any of them are linear dependent, we will not call the basis. We just call the generating set. Okay, this is our basic definition. Okay. The four issues of dimension of the vector space. So similar idea. If we have if we have 99 vectors, but they are linear dependent. The dimension of the if a generation set is based on the 99 vectors, and the V, the space V spanned based on the 99 vectors would have a one-dimensional space. So the dimension of the vector space will be determined with the number of linear dependent vectors. Okay. So based on the review, we would like to move on to the vector space in matrix. Okay, to handle the infinity row vectors and column vectors. Okay, let's move on to the third part. Okay, so we can mention the two parts together in a matrix. Okay, so you can consider there are a lot of rows in the matrix and a lot of columns in the matrix. So each row or each column could be vectors. So you can have a lot of vectors in the matrix. And there are some space in the matrix. The first is a row space. The row space is based on the expansion of the row vectors, and the column space relative to the matrix A is defined by the expansion of the column space, column vectors. Okay. The third space is called the null space of the matrix A. It equals to is spanned with x, and what is x? Is a solution attended with a formula AS equals to 0. So S is a non-zero solution for the equation. Okay. So we can So there are three representative space in the matrix. The first is a row space. It's based on it's spanned with row vectors in the matrix, and the column space is spanned with column vectors, and the null space is spanned with the zero solution. The solution is based on the formula AS equal to 0. So here we would like to use an example to learn more on this issue. Okay. Before we move on to, before we calculate the row space, color space, and null space, we can use this example to learn more unique property of the matrix. Okay. In the example, we have three vectors. It's a column vector. So U1, U2, U3. If a space U, big U, expand based on the three vectors, the three column vectors, then how to derive the basis of the space V, U? So what does the basis means? Means the linear independent vectors. So we want to find the generating set. We can. So the requirement is similar to asking you to find a linear independent generating set. So how to derive the linear independent vectors. So how to do this? We can use the Gauss elimination process operation to get reduced echelon matrix here. So the first step, we can that the matrix A is composed with the three vectors here. So we put the three vectors in the matrix A. Then we can have a matrix as a column 1 equals to U1. Column 2 equals to U2. Column 3 equals to U3. Okay. So we can use Gauss elimination operation to get the reduced row echelon. So here, I would like to highlight that there are two pivots exist in the reduced echelon here. So in the reduced matrix, so we can have three column vectors here, right? So R, what does R means? It means the vectors is existed in the reduced matrix. Reduce a row echelon matrix here. So, but here you can find the first two column vectors are linear independent, and the third vectors are linear dependent. And because the third vectors equals to 2 CR1 plus minus 1 CR2. Right? So you can check. It's the CR3, right? So 2 equals to 2 times CR1 here. And the minus 1 equals to minus 1 times CR2, right? So with a reduced matrix, we can clearly identify the relationship between the covariant vectors. And this relationship is exactly same to the original matrix. So you can check. This one is a C1, C2, C3 in the original matrix, right? Its original matrix A is a reduced matrix. And you can check the C3 in the A matrix equals to 2C1 minus 1C2. So let's check. Minus 5 equals to 2 times minus 1 plus minus 1 times 3, right? So is it lucky to obtain this relationship? The answer is not. 4 equals to 2 times common 1 minus plus minus 1 times common 2. So you can check all the relationship works. So it tells us that in the matrix A, we can have a lot of vectors. We can have 4 row vectors, 3 column vectors, right? But we are not. It's very difficult to understand, to identify the relationship between among the vectors. But after we perform the calculation for the reduced row echelon, we can clearly identify the number of the linear dependent row or column, right? Because for example, here we have 2 pivots. So the rank of the row equals 2, right? The rank of the column also equals 2. So we have 2 pivots. So in other words, we have the space is 2-dimensional because we only have 2 linear independent vectors. So we have 2 R2 space. So here, for the basis of the U, basis equals to the basis equals to linear independent generation set. So the set could be the 2 vectors. And how about the third vectors? The third vectors is based on the linear combination of the 2 vectors, right? So you can you can obtain the U space by spanning span. Here you have the third. You have the third vector, but the third vector is a linear. Is based on a linear combination of the two vectors. So this one is linear dependent to the two vectors. So the two case we have the same space. Okay. So here is the answer for example. So here we can get the real space square, the R2 space. And this is a subspace in the R4. What does the 4 means? Because here we have a 4 variable here. So, but the answer after calculation, we have two pivots. So we have two linear independent row and colors. So the dimensional for the space U is spanned with two linear independent vectors. So we call the space U is a R2 space, and this space is a subspace in the R4. And then what does the 4 means? We have a 4 variable here. Okay. So we have a 10-minute rest. We will further use the other example to understand the free space. Okay. Okay, let's keep going. We would like to use this example to further understand the space in the matrix. So for this example, we have a matrix A with 3 rows and 4 columns. So it's also called a 3 by 4 matrix. So if we want to find the null space with respect to the matrix A, or row space of the matrix A, or column space. So the null space is spanned is an X follow A as equals to 0. Right? Row space and then column space is easier. Here we have 3 rows. So the 3 rows will be, so we can span the row space based on the 3 rows. Okay. And we have a 4 column space, column vectors, right? So we can use 4 columns vector to span the column space. Okay. So here we would like to start with the null space of the matrix A. So we want to have this. So the AX, so you can consider the X here. S1, S2, S3, S4. So AS equals 0, you will have a non-zero solution for the X. Close the X. So if the X is spanned for the null space, how can we derive for the null space? So the first step, we can use a Gauss elimination operation to obtain the reduced row echelon here. So we can have this reduced echelon by creating more zero. For example, we found that the matrix A, the second row, we have a 1, the element 1 here in the second row. So we can let the first row times minus 1 and plus the second row. So we can create the 0 in the first column. And we can use the first row times minus 1 and plus the third row here to create the other 0 in the first column. Right? So based on this method, it's called Gauss elimination operation. So we can create more 0 in the matrix to form the reduced row echelon with a clear pivot in the matrix. For example, we need to cancel out this non-zero term here. So we can let the second row times 1 and A to the third row. So we can cancel this term. So and we can times minus 1 to get the variable 1. So it's a pivot, it's a reducer matrix here. So based on this, we have 2 issues to learn. the first is it's very clear to identify the relationship among all the vectors. For example, for the column vectors in the reduced matrix, for the third column, so the R refers to reduced row echelon. So the third column in the reduced echelon could be linear combination based on the first column and then the second column in the reduced echelon. Right? So the CR3 could be 1 times the CR1 plus minus 1 CR2, right? So the relationship equals to C3 so it's a reduced matrix. It's an original matrix, right? So let's check. In the third column, so you can check the element 1 could be the first column, element in the first column plus minus 1 times the second column. So 2 equals to 1 plus minus 1 times a minus 1, right? So you found the relationship among the vectors, the column vectors, could be clearly identified based on the reduced echelon, right? So it's very, very helpful because it's in reduced dimension, but in some days the space is extended to very high dimension. For example, it's a 3 by 4 matrix. If you want to handle 30 by 40 space, so you will handle 30 rows and 40 columns. It will be impossible to clearly identify the relationship between the vectors, right? The only way, the best way, might be the only way we can clearly identify the relationship between or among all the vectors is we can use a very simple operation, Gauss elimination operation. It's very easy, but it's very helpful for us to identify the relationship between among the vectors. It's for this CR3, and you can the two vectors are linear independent, right? And the two vectors are linear dependence. So the CR4, we can clearly identify equals to 2 CR1 plus 1 CR2, right? So the relationship will exactly same the relationship in the original matrix. So C4 should be equals to 2C1 plus 1C2 here. So you can check the fourth column, element in the fourth column will equals to the 2 times the elements in the first column plus 1 times the element in the second column. So 2 equals to 2 times 1 plus 1 times 0. And 1 equals to let me check. Okay. Anyway, we can use a relationship to check all the vectors in the matrix, original matrix A. Okay, is the first thing. And the second thing is that we want to obtain the rule space. So here we have a reduced echelon here, right? So we can then come back to the we can let the AR times X. We want to derive this for the solution of the non-zero solution of the X. So here we can have the relationship equals to S1 times S3 times 2S4 equals 0 for the first row, and the first column we will have the relation here. The second row times the first column, we will have S2 minus S3 minus S4 equals to 0, right? So, as mentioned before, we use that we usually that S3 equals to C1, S4 equals to C2 because S3, S4 located at pinpoint position. So we use this assumption. So we can have S1 equals to minus C1 plus this one, S2 equals to C1 minus C2. So the X will equals to S1, S2, S3, S4. And S1 equals to minus C1 minus 2 C2, S2 C1 minus C2, S3 C1, S4 C2. Right? So here we can have a C1 minus 1 so we can have this. Okay, so this one is S1, this is S2, right? So the Lua space is that we can span the S1 and S2. Okay. And one is the rho space. We can span two rows in the reduced echelon, or also equals to span the three rows in the original matrix. So it's an original matrix. It's a there are two vectors in the reduced matrix here. Right? So there are three vectors, three row vectors in the original matrix. Okay, and the most significant, the column space is only H. Or we can use it's also fine to use four vectors to span for the color vector, color space A. But as we mentioned here, the C3, C4 color vectors are linear dependent because the C3 equals to linear combination of the C1 and C2. And the C4, the color vector of the fourth color is a linear combination of the C1 and C2. Right? So if you remove the two linear dependent vector, the result will be same. So you can use the linear independent vectors C1, C2, or you can use all of the color vectors in the original matrix. It's fine. But you cannot use the vectors in a reduced row echelon. I think most textbook they don't mention this. So we design example to tell why we cannot use the column vectors in a reduced echelon to describe the color space. Okay, we use this to describe this issue. Okay. Before this, we need to answer the dimension of each space. For example, for the Newell space, they have two linear independent vectors here, right? You have two vectors, linear dependent vectors. So the dimension of the Newell space is square. So it's a two-dimensional space. So it's a subspace of the R4 space. What does the 4 means? Because you have a 4 variable here. So it should be the R4 space. But the answer for the Newell space, in the Newell space, there are only two linear independent vectors. So it's a R2 space. It's a two-dimensional space in real space. So it's a subspace in the entire fourth real space. Okay. So the row space, we have two linear independent vectors here or here. So we can use the two linear independent vector to span for the row space A, or we can use the three row space row vectors in the original matrix. But this space is a R2 space because you have two linear independent vectors. Okay. Similarly, color space is also R2 space. Cube space, two-dimensional space in the real space. Okay, because we have two linear independent vectors, right? Okay, and we would like to use the additional example to describe why we need to, why we cannot use a reduced echelon, the column vectors in the reduced echelon matrix to describe the column space A. So, for example, A is an original matrix, right? So we can use a similar idea to create a reduced echelon here. So it's a original matrix. It's a matrix of reduced row echelon matrix, right? So we can create a more zero term. So we can let the first row comes -1 plus the second one to create 0, right? Then we can swap the two rows between the second and third row. So we can have 0 to the second row. Then we can let the second row comes 1/2. So we can have this, right? So we can have the reduced echelon matrix like this. So we just plot a space. So here, what is a vector for 1, 1, 0? 1, 1, 0 to this direction. So it's x, it's a y, it's a z, right? So 1, 1, 0. And the 0, 0, 2. Will be in this direction, right? So the two vectors will span the space. So the space span will be based on the two vectors is in this plane, right? Okay. Compared to this, so 1, 0, 0 in this direction, right? This direction is 1, 0, 1, 0. Right? So if you use the two columns vectors in the reduced echelon, the space span will be the S1 point. So the two plane is not same. So that's the reason we cannot, we usually not, we should not use usually the term usually. We should use a precisely term. We cannot use common vectors in the reduced matrix to describe the column space. The column space should be described based on the column vectors in the original space. So the span is spanned with column vectors in the original space. It's in red color, right? So it's a true color space, column space. So we use this method to verify this idea geometrically. So we can plot the space for clear understanding of the color space. But in most cases, we usually to understand the vector relationship among vectors based on the reduced echelon. But if you want to describe the color space, we need to avoid directly using the color vectors in the reduced low echelon matrix to describe the color space. Okay. So in the textbook, they don't mention too much on this, but in near future, if you handle some specific course, you might need to have some background on this. Okay. So I think that today we just stop here because next part will be relative to eigenvalue and eigenfunction, eigenvector of the matrix. So we will talk about more these important parts next week. Okay.